If we can learn anything from the fall of Atlantis, it's that pride really does come before the fall. This is something that I reflect on in my own life constantly because I think that it rings very true. I think that we have seen this consistently throughout history, and I don't think that that leads us wrong. So when we look at the fall of Atlantis, we see people who had begun to develop spiritually to a degree that was past the point of what they actually had the spiritual maturity for. And so they reach a point where there's less of an emphasis on shadow work, less of an emphasis on grounding, and instead it's like, ooh, look at all this power I have. Instead of using the knowledge that they had acquired for self-development and the evolution of mankind, they use it for manipulation and control. And they decide, we want to take control of etheric forces. We want to pave our own way, and we basically want to create a completely new path where we don't have to submit to God and we don't have to submit to anyone. We are God now is kind of the place that they were coming from. And what happens and what ultimately causes the fall is that our spiritual imbalance is a reflection of the balance of the net. This essentially means that our collective inner state begins to build an atmosphere around us that impacts the sphere that we are occupying and basically makes it either more dense or more etheric. So the goal is for us to bring ourselves into a more etheric form, not by bypassing or leaving the body, but by spiritualizing it through the etherization of the blood, which is this spiritualization of the human form. And the earth follows a very similar process to this, but it follows that process by following our lead. However, when we get into pride and selfishness and the goal is not to build a world that is all light and has no shadow, because that's not really realistic. More so, it's about integrating the shadow so that it can be transmuted into light, which is very different than simply attempting to bypass it, which is exactly what they did in Atlantis. They didn't want to have to take the long path to transmutation. They thought that they could find a way around it, a way that allowed them to essentially bypass the cosmos and the divine plan. Realistically, life just does not work this way, and unfortunately, we seem to be following a very similar trajectory as we seek to bypass spiritual development.